Today, we're going to talk about a story of revolution. It's about how a few groundbreaking open-source technologies completely smashed the old way of doing things, taking power away from a handful of huge corporations and putting it right into the hands of developers, people just like you. So how did we get here? I mean, the technologies that run our entire digital world, they didn't just pop into existence, they were fought for. This is the story of how data itself broke free from these super expensive lockdown systems and really became a tool for everyone. To really get this, you gotta rewind the clock. Way back when, managing data was crazy expensive and just restrictive. If you wanted a serious, powerful database, you were writing a massive check to a company like Oracle. And guess what? You were locked into their world, their rules.
Well, this is the story of that revolution, and it has three main characters. Three really different technologies that came at the problem from totally different angles, and together, they changed everything. They democratized data for all of us.
I mean, seriously, just picture it. You've got a great idea for an app or a website, but before you can even think about writing code, you have to find a way to pay this massive licensing fee. That was the reality. And that kind of vendor lock-in, it just choked innovation. It created this walled garden where only the biggest companies with the deepest pockets could even afford to play.
All right, so our first revolutionary is the academic powerhouse, PostgreSQL. This thing wasn't built to get a quick website off the ground. Nope, it was built for stability, for compliance, and for handling ridiculously complex data with absolute integrity.
Yeah, its roots aren't in some Silicon Valley garage. They're in a university research lab at UC Berkeley. It was designed with academic rigor from day one, built to be tough and flexible. And by 1996, it had become PostgreSQL, a truly serious database that was ready to go toe-to-toe with the big, expensive guys on their own turf. So what made it the real deal, the go-to alternative to Oracle? Well, it all came down to trust. It offered what's called strict ACID compliance, which is basically a guarantee that your most important data, like financial transactions, will never, ever get corrupted. You pile on its power to handle complex queries, even mapping data, and boom, you have an open-source database that you could bet your business on. And here's the crucial point. PostgreSQL totally shattered the myth that open source was just for hobbyists. It proved that a free tool could be just as powerful, just as reliable, and just as secure as the most expensive systems out there. It was the first truly free, enterprise-grade alternative. Now, let's meet our next revolutionary. And it's a completely different personality. If PostgreSQL was the serious academic, this is the people's champion, the database that made it incredibly easy for anyone, anywhere to start building on the web. Let's talk about MySQL. The story of MySQL is just explosive growth. It was created in '95, and pretty soon it became the engine of the early web. It was the M in the famous LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. That was the simple, free, open-source recipe that powered millions upon millions of websites for years. And why did it take off like a rocket? One word: simplicity. While PostgreSQL was the heavyweight champion of data integrity, MySQL was the scrappy, lightweight speedster. It was fast, super easy to install, and just perfect for getting a website up and running in no time. That whole philosophy is what fueled platforms we still use every day, like WordPress. You see, this was all about democratization. MySQL put a really capable database into the hands of millions of developers, and it cost them nothing. It didn't just make it cheaper to build for the web, it practically eliminated the cost, which just unleashed this massive wave of creativity. Okay, so before we meet our last revolutionary, we have to talk about a little plot twist. The world was changing, and data started getting, messy. It wasn't always fitting into those neat little rows and columns anymore. And this led to the rise of something called NoSQL. So here's the basic difference. On one side, you've got your traditional relational database. Think of a spreadsheet, super structured, everything in its place. Great for consistency. But then on the other side, you have this flexible JSON document. It looks a little chaotic, right? But it's actually much closer to how developers think about data in their code. It's less like a spreadsheet and more like a digital filing cabinet. And that brings us to the modern disruptor, the trailblazer of this whole new document model. MongoDB was built from the ground up for the speed, agility, and flexibility that today's crazy fast applications demand. MongoDB's literal superpower is flexibility. Because it uses that document model, developers aren't stuck in a rigid structure. You can change how you store your data on the fly as your app evolves. And that is a perfect match for modern, agile development, where moving fast and scaling out in the cloud is absolutely everything. So you see, MongoDB wasn't just another database. It was a whole new philosophy. It embraced the flexible, sometimes chaotic reality of modern data. It was a tool built specifically for cloud-native apps, where being able to adapt and move fast isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a requirement. Okay, let's take a breath. We've met the powerhouse, the web's champion, and the modern disruptor. Now let's step back and look at what happens when you put them all together. Let's look at their collective impact and how they completely rewired the world of technology. The legacy here is just profound. It all comes down to one word: freedom. Freedom from those gigantic licensing fees. Freedom from being locked into one company's world. And it's the power for any developer anywhere to look at the code, fix things, and contribute back. This shift empowered an entire generation of builders and just fostered this incredible explosion of innovation.
And make no mistake, this isn't some niche story for tech geeks. The entire digital world you live in every single day, from cloud giants like AWS and Azure to the shows you're binging on Netflix, all of it is built on the foundation that these open source pioneers created.
This has become the standard playbook for how you build modern software. Step 1, you develop on powerful, free, open source tools. Step 2, you deploy your work to the cloud instantly. Step 3, you use it to run the world's most important applications. This entire pipeline, this engine of modern innovation, was made possible by the revolution we've just been talking about. And all of this leaves us with one final big question. The revolution isn't over. It's just evolving. As these incredible open source projects get packaged up into massive cloud services, are we seeing a new kind of lock-in? A new kind of walled garden? What does freedom and innovation even look like in this new cloud-first world? That's the question the next generation of builders, maybe even you, is going to have to answer.